Okay, welcome everybody to our live stream, our podcast, Royce in the House. Um, Next to me, up on top, is Dave. Dave, I'm sorry, Dan. Dan McNew. Just the Facts has a great show of his own, a couple of shows. Just the Facts and Ask a Dan, right?
Yeah.
And then just below me is Jeff Davidson, one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met when it comes to music. He seems to know just about everything. And next to him, diagonal from me and below, is Lou Mars, LouMarsBooks.com. Lou Mars
Cheers.
is an award-winning drummer. He's won some drum offs. He's been in a reality show. He's been in bands his whole life. And he's just a fantastic drummer, and he really brings a lot to the show. And so I just want to thank all my co-hosts. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Maria just came in, Maria Day, into the chat, and I'm going to say, hi, Maria. Hi,
Here's the money for that plug, Royce.
And yeah, and you know what? We've been enjoying a lot of people coming on that have things going on. We've had Michael Nolan, The Bottom Line. He's got a fantastic show. He put a 12-minute video up of our last show where he joined us.
That's great.
Was promoting us on his channel, and then YouTube took it down.
What?
Yeah, YouTube took it down, and I can't sit here and tell you why. He must have crossed the line on some little thing, So he says he's going to redo it, where he's not crossing the line.
Wow, there's 1,000 views on that.
Back up. Yeah, he had 1,000.
There was 1,000 views on that when I saw
1,000 views, and they took it down. They took it down, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So that's crazy, So anyway, Michael's been a good guy for the channel, and others, we had Rachel's Music Ma'am, and she was great and very supportive of all of us. And then I don't know if it was a spoof or what, but her show disappeared, supposedly for explicit content. And now she's back, and she's called Rachel's Ghost. Rachel's Ghost, and she's back on daily,
That's funny.
And they really must have taken it down because her subscribers right now were like down to a couple of hundred, where she was well over 1,000. So okay, so we're going to get the show going tonight. I'm really excited about this one. I really enjoyed the last part 1 and part 2 of albums that changed rock and changed the direction of rock and the sound of rock. And tonight we're going to talk about infamous front men and women, And I think I'll just kick it off. And I'm almost kicking it off with what I kicked the albums off with last time. But this time I'm going to start with Chuck Berry. And Chuck Berry had an amazing, amazing stage presence, And he was really famous for the duck walk. If you watch a Chuck Berry performance, he's doing the splits. He's a real tall guy with long legs. And he's practically completely doing the splits. And then all of a sudden he'll squat down and he'll do what he calls the duck walk that he invented. And he said when he invented the duck walk, here's what happened. He was a little boy at home. A ball rolled underneath the kitchen table. He didn't want to climb down on his hands and knees and go get the ball. So he squatted all the way down, bending his knees, but kept his torso and his head upright. And everybody thought the way he looked getting it, his family, they all laughed so hard that he started doing that all the time around the house. So on his first live performance in 1956 in New York, he got up on stage and started doing that duck walk, and he's done it ever since. And I thought that was a great story, the way he started the whole thing. And there is a little rumor that back in the 30s, T-Bone Walker was doing something kind of similar. But that's all I heard. That was just a little bit of a rumor. And anyway, so I thought that was a great story. And I'll tell you what, he's the godfather of rock and roll, Chuck Berry. Think of all the people that copied him. I mean, everybody. Yeah. I mean, John Lennon once said, if you were going to rename rock and roll, you might call it Chuck Berry.
Chuck and Little Richard. Yeah, don't forget Little Richard in there on that.
Little Richard too, yeah. And Keith Richards said about Chuck Berry, I stole every lick he made. And he did.
Yeah. Well,
and so did everybody else. Tell me you don't hear the Beach Boys. You don't hear the Beach Boys copying Johnny Be Good and all these opening riffs on Chuck Berry songs. I mean, You guys have anything you want to say about Chuck Berry? I mean, I think he's fantastic. I've got a double album that I bought a few months back, Chuck Berry, with all his big hits on it: "Sweet Little 16," "Maybelline," "Johnny Be Good." You know, I mean, there's so many. I mean, they're just endless. He's been around for so long, and sadly, he died just a couple of years ago. I think he was 90 years old. He lived to be 90 years old. And he was still duck walking on stage and doing the splits, you know, up to the time that he died. It was just absolutely amazing.
I can attest to that because I saw him not too long before he died.
Oh, did you?
Maybe a couple of years, but
how did he look up on stage as far as moving and stuff?
Well, he you know, of course, he was like 86 years old or something at the time I saw him.
Right.
And he was not moving around quite as much, but he did.
Yeah.
Finally do the duck walk at the end for us. But he did Johnny Be Good.
Yeah.
Oh, who's there?
Hey, guys.
There goes the neighborhood.
The conversation. I started out with Chuck Berry. We talked a little bit how he invented the duck walk and how he could do the splits on stage and how everybody copied him, from the Beach Boys to Keith Richards to I don't know if you heard John Lennon said if you were going to rename rock and roll, you might consider calling it Chuck Berry. You know?
Oh yeah, the famous duck walk where you bend the G string and then hit that high E string. Oh yeah, wonderful.
Well, let's say that now. You mentioned a lot of the influences from his writing is what John Lennon's talking about. The 12-bar blues became a standard. However, what has not been mentioned, let's face it, in my opinion, Angus Young would not exist if it wasn't for Chuck Berry. Those moves are Chuck Berry. Yep. Come on. Right. It's a great lift. He brought it to another level. A lot of times we get inspired by seeing how somebody else moved. I've seen drummers do certain things. Yeah. I'm like, wow. And so I'll try to take it to another level. And that's what Angus Young, I think, did with Chuck Berry. Right. So it should be mentioned, though. But so it was Chuck that clearly, visibly inspired him, I think.
Oh, so many people.
I would imagine he would admit that.
Like I said, Keith Richards said he stole every lick Chuck Berry had, you know. And again, you hear these licks. I don't know how many songs I've heard. They start out like Johnny Be Good. You know, I mean, like the Beach Boys. And
the Beach Boys.
So many Beach Boys songs are inspired by Chuck Berry. It's just amazing.
Well, like in that same period, you got Little Richard, since you're starting around that period. Now, Little Richard doing I mean, the Beatles were doing that. I mean, we're copying Little Richard so much, you know, he kicked them off their tour. They were warming up for him, you know. Oh,
he kicked them off their tour.
The Beatles got bumped off the tour because they were.
I never heard that before. That's great.
That is a fact. And they were doing his little Who thing so much, and they played a couple of his songs, and he got pissed. It's like, don't play my own songs at my own show. You know? Beatles.
Yeah, that would piss you off. Take somebody on tour and they're playing your songs.
Yeah, so you know, it just goes here. Let me turn this up.
Great.
Yeah, no, that's being inspired. But Little Richard, I mean, think about it. He was wearing eyeliner.
Oh, Little Richard.
We now call guyliner. Way before, you know, we were like, you know, what is this hair?
Everybody always said he was way ahead of his time.
Way ahead.
You know, I mean, that was glam all the way. Lipstick, makeup.
He smack talk like Muhammad Ali. You know, when he talks about, I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. You know?
I saw him not too long, about the same time I saw Chuck Berry, and we went to see B.B. King, and then the next night at this casino was going to be Little Richard, and I was like, $30 to see Little Richard? We need to go to this because they still have tickets. And so we was like, well, how's this going to be? You know, I don't know. And so come night of the show, they come rolling him out there in a wheelchair, and he had on a gold lame suit, and they roll him up to the piano, and I swear he sounded exactly the same. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah.
He was killer.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not unlike how they're dealing with Phil Collins these days, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh man.
Is that right?
I saw that. That's heartbreaking.
Aren't they almost wheeling him out in a wheelchair? He's walking out in the can, I guess.
He did his last show. He's done.
It's over.
Yeah.
They were doing that. They were doing that. Yeah. He
You know
couldn't
what?
try no more.
What's crazy? What's crazy? Speaking of Chuck Berry again, I had one of those little shirt pocket transistor radios when I was a kid. Well, I had one right after another. I think they were like $7. And it had a single earphone, you know, not headphones, but a single plug, you know.
Right.
And I could usually get one channel, you know, Kino, the rock channel in Las Vegas. And all of a sudden, one day I heard Chuck Berry sing, "Riding along in my automobile, my baby beside me at the wheel." And I lost my mind. One of the older guys in the neighborhood walked over one day and saw me listening. He goes, "What are you listening to?" And I said, "Rock and roll." He goes, "Oh, you are rock and roll, huh?" He goes, "Who's your favorite?" And I said, "Chuck Berry." He goes, "Oh, really?" Started telling me about all these other Chuck Berry songs and stuff. And you know, that was like a milestone for me in my musical taste, was that one song, "Riding Along in My Automobile." And then I started noticing all those other songs, Maybelline and "What Maybelline, Why Won't You Be True," and all that. And they were all just fantastic songs. But I mean, I couldn't have been more than 9 years old listening to that stuff, you know?
Well, you know, one thing we just did that the people do not know that are signing in or are going to watch this later, they didn't hear the pregame on this. Before the people showed up, we were in the back room chatting. And one of the things that they did not hear us talk about that I think we should mention now, Royce,
Okay,
is
good.
that we were defining, first off, some of the elements. Dan was doing a great job, I felt, specifically of kind of bulleting what is or what makes a great frontman. What is it? You know, is it just moving around like crazy, or is it singing with a really great voice? Dan, why don't you repeat what you said, if you wouldn't mind, earlier?
Well, to me, there's like at least three things. First of all, they got to be very talented. They have to have the talent. Second, they have to have the attitude. Well, actually, there's quite a few things. Stage presence.
It's a presence,
Their interaction with the audience, you know, on stage and off stage.
Right.
You want your audience to feel as though they know you personally.
Right.
You know, and if you're distant, well, they're not going to be as close. So,
Right.
You know, that's one of the things, like with the band Pantera, they had an open door policy, which means if you wanted to get on stage and they thought you were, if they knew you, you could get on stage with them at certain parts of their concert.
I remember that, yeah.
You know, sometimes you'd have 30, 40 people up on the stage.
Is that right?
I watched one of your videos.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
You know, and then, but eventually, though, that was kind of a bad call because the night the shooting happened, the guy came on stage unwanted and did the killing. So, you know, they were almost too open door policy.
Almost too open. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many was it like 8 people got shot that night?
No, there was a total of 5 people, including the gunman, was killed.
Okay.
There were also I think three others that were shot, survived.
A real tragedy.
You know, I was thinking, Dan, about what you were just saying just prior to getting into Dimebag. You know, that's one of the things I think that is so cool about Robert Plant. Now, one of the things, now he's not a lead vocalist for a band, but Elvis, right away, everybody knew that Elvis was real.
Authenticity.
You could see you could see his shyness. You could see still the polite young man, and people got turned on to that. And I think Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin always had that ability. He somehow could come out looking like a Greek god, right?
Absolutely.
Sounding like Apollo himself. And then at the same time, not alienate every 16-year-old boy that was there with their girlfriend. And he just had it all, guys. He had it all.
Yeah.
You wanted to be him. You wanted to be him when you watched Robert Plant. You wanted to be that dude. And I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. When I saw Robert Plant,
unless you turned your eyes over to stage right, or however they say that, and saw Page strapped with that six gun, you know, guitar. Then you wanted to be him, but then Robert would open his mouth.
I'm going to mention something that's a lot of people don't talk about Robert Plant. But it's obvious. It's obvious to his people. So as far as stage presence and look, one of the things that Robert Plant was one of the first of, and Elvis did this a little bit too, and ladies know this, is the package. He was showing his package. You guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Robert Plant.
He wore some pretty tight pants. Yeah.
You're like, I think I know his religion, you know. And he's right-handed.
That explains that object that was about 1 foot in front of him.
Is that a butterfly patch? You know, but that's part of rock and roll. You know, he could wear a little girl's blouse, have his package pointing to the west, and then the next thing you know, and you still want to be that dude. You're just like, I want to be him, man.
Yeah, tight the blouse tight above his navel with a couple of buttons down on his pants. You know?
And he looked cool as hell.
I just covered this in a video, guys, and one of the, where that all started to happen was they went on tour late, 1968, first American tour. They left. They had to leave the 23rd of December so that they could get and start showing up all the headlining bands, immediately. But Robert was still having trouble connecting. And it was during the West Coast section of that tour down in LA at the Whiskey A Go-Go, 5 nights running, playing with Alice Cooper, right?
Okay.
He transformed himself. After that, they hit the Fillmore West, then off to the East Coast to the Fillmore East, and he was transformed, and so was Led Zeppelin. And that's that part that, Dan, you're talking about. Up to this point, up to the point of the Whiskey A Go-Go, guys, he wasn't quite on that world edge level. And both him and Page were concerned about that, and something happened. And Dan, that's what I'm talking about when you were talking about all those nuances as to what makes a truly great lead vocalist. It just hit me like a ton of bricks,
You have to have
Elvis.
You have to have all those elements.
Yep, Elvis started it all.
Well, it's like Dan said though. Also, what Dan said in the green room earlier though was that not all of these guys have all of the elements.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can have like a combination and still be pretty damn good. I'm going to go Mick Jagger, for example. Doesn't have the greatest voice, but man, those moves, who wouldn't want that dude as a front man for your band? Would you turn that guy down? Hell no. He would lose on American Idol. He would lose on The Voice. He wouldn't even make it past the finals.
Right.
But that's perfect. He had the perfect voice for the Stones.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
nobody else could sing it.
You could say Morrison, but he was perfect for that band.
Yeah. There's something to be said about that perfect combo.
Backing up to Elvis. Okay. Elvis had all that hip gyrating and dancing and hip gyrating. And it actually suggested sexuality, right? So when he was invited on the Milton Berle show, they filmed his whole body and they saw all that gyrating and stuff. And what happened was look at that.
Let me show some of my records tonight.
Jeff to the rescue, always.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, okay. So he went on the Milton Berle show, and they were showing his whole body dancing and gyrating. And the producers got all kinds of hate mail from that. And the American audience just wasn't quite ready for it. Now, a little while later, 1956, he went on the Ed Sullivan Show, and they only filmed him from the chest up. But in the audience, all the girls were screaming and excited, and they were enjoying it. And that's when it all kind of turned around, because now the audience was ready for it. You kind of between those two shows, And
they could block his hips, but they couldn't block that lip snarl. His lips that night did all the freaking dancing they needed to do. Amazing.
There's the attitude. There's the attitude right there.
It drove them more crazy because of what they couldn't see.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
but Elvis was a game changer.
Show right there.
I mean,
well, it's like you said. I've seen photos before we leave Elvis. I just want to say I've seen several photos, and as a kid, I watched the Hawaiian televised live, which was huge via satellite. Remember that one? That was massive.
I was
sitting there. Yeah. Oh man, were you? You bastard.
I actually met Elvis.
Oh my God.
I got whole movies of Elvis.
Tell us about that. Tell us about what. So wait. So here's why I want you to say something about it, because I've been in the same room, fortunate with a lot of stars, and as I said earlier, I'm going to the green room again. Our conversation, where certain people would walk in a room, I could even have my back to them, and I could feel that damn room tilt. I could feel the room tilt. There's an energy for some of these people. The stage is high, but some people are even higher when they stand on that stage. There's just something about them. You can't teach it. I felt it. And Elvis has got to be one of those guys. So did you feel that when you met Elvis? Did you have that feeling in the room?
Well, I was never really an Elvis fan before I met him. You know, he was more of my mom's type of music. And I just happened to be in Honolulu. It was on January 9th, 1973. I'm laying out on Waikiki Beach, and I actually fell asleep. But I heard these people running past me. So I woke up, and there's a little heliport not too far from where I was lying. And everybody's gathered around there, and my sister's with me. And I said, you know, I think somebody must be getting ready to land over there. So I got up, walked over to the fence, and saw all these Elvis posters. I said, Elvis Presley's getting ready to land here. So I had my little 8mm camera with me. So being 15 years old, I just kind of weaseled my way up to the front, you know, and I'm right there.
Right on, dude.
I filmed the helicopter coming in, and of course the movie crews were there, and you know, his dad was there, Sonny, Red, all of them were there.
Colonel,
the Colonel was there, Joe.
Wow.
I mean, everybody was there, and so he gets out of the helicopter and he goes around and he starts shaking hands with people around the fence area, and that's where I was, and I shook his hand.
Yeah,
right on.
Yeah, you're close.
So that was pretty cool.
You know,
suddenly I became an Elvis fan after that. But that literally that day changed my life, because
really,
it inspired me so much. I said, I've got to be in the music business, man. This is so cool. Because he was he was more than real. It was just like, you know, you're just mesmerized by this guy. He had just turned 38, I think, the day before. And so he was still a young guy. Well, he was a young guy when he passed, but
he was,
And so that kind of changed my life. You know, I started after that. I started after my military time, I started working with bands, and you know, just got in the music industry after that. But that was the day that was a change for me.
It doesn't get much bigger than that
video, and I think I've seen it 3, maybe even 4 times. You've played it before, and we've all watched it. And then we took it to Rachel Music Mam's show and played it one time, or you did. I happened to be there at the time that you did it. And it's a fun video to watching that helicopter come in and Elvis with his entourage walking across the tarmac or whatever. It is. It's a really cool video to watch. And you know, speaking of Elvis, growing up in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of Vegas, we always say Vegas. We're from Vegas. Elvis was like always a part of our lives, you know. I mean, he was always playing in Vegas. I remember when in actual Henderson, they had a little oval dirt track, and they made a movie where he was a race car driver. And well, what an eye opener! We went and watched some of the filming of that. And these cars, I mean, it looks like they're going 200 miles an hour in the movie, you know. And they're going like about 10 miles an hour. You know, and running into hay bales and stuff, and they're turning it into a big thing. But it was also fake looking. But he was filming a movie there, and you know, he played forever in Vegas. And like I said, we felt like he was a part of our lives growing up. And Dad took us to the drive-in theater and watched all the movies when they came out, you know. And so anyway, Elvis. Yeah,
I was gonna say, what do you guys think about? You know, out of all. I never met the man. I never got to see him live. It's sad, but out of all of his stuff, besides maybe his first couple of movies, there, the one that the special I was really impressed with, even more so than Hawaii, was his 1969 comeback?
Yes.
And he sits down and actually plays guitar.
Yeah,
that was a badass special. Yeah,
right.
You know, I saw that when it first came out, first showing, and I said that I would follow until one of us died, you know?
Right.
He's playing freaking guitar, man. And
yeah,
was
no,
just
he
like
really
ghost
did,
was
you know,
up.
and
Yeah.
he actually, you know, he played the guitar as a youngster, and some very
He was
bad
a real
guitars to
guitarist.
start with.
Well, I felt like the Hawaiian show was almost like he was already a caricature of himself. He was just playing himself.
He looked good,
Yeah.
though. He looked good.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a trick question for the panel here today on this one. All right. I know pretty much you guys well enough that I think I know each one of your number one. But if you guys had a band, I want to know who would be your second choice to be in front of your band as a badass front man. Who would you choose? Your second choice.
My second choice?
Yeah, not your first.
I would say Dave Grohl.
Ooh, that's interesting. Why Dave Grohl?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty
he's a
damn
good
upscale
choice.
right there. Right? Dave
Well,
Grohl.
That's a good.
Well, there's kind of a connection between me and Dave Grohl. He's actually, well, he was on the board of directors of my organization. So a little biased there, but he's also known as the nicest guy in rock and roll right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
True.
and he said he learned that from Dimebag because he was friends with
No
Daryl.
kidding. Wow.
So you got a connection there.
Yeah, he's actually come back at Ride for Dime, and you know, at the end of the ride at Dimebag's house, they'd have a big barbecue, and Dave would be the chef. So if you were part of the ride, you got to go there, you know, and have Dave cook for you. So that's pretty cool.
What about you, Jeff? Who'd be your number two?
My number two. Of course, Elvis would be number one.
All right.
But,
I wouldn't have guessed that for you, actually. I wouldn't have guessed Elvis.
Oh, I'm going David Lee Roth.
Whoa, nice. Yeah, hell of a front man. Showman.
If
So
I
not
can play
necessarily.
like Eddie Van Halen.
You know, right? So far, we got two guys that don't have the greatest voices in rock and roll that just got selected. I'm just pointing that out.
Yep.
You know, I mean, Grohl is amazing, but he doesn't have a killer 5-octave voice or anything. So there's that authenticity. What about Michael?
But he makes up
Freddie
for that.
Mercury does, and that would be my number 2 point.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, because your number one is Robert Plant, right? Clearly.
But Freddie Mercury is so darn close. I mean, they're like, you know, both of them. You know, if someone told me, no, Freddie Mercury has the greatest voice in rock and roll, because as you guys know, I think that, you know, Robert Plant does. But Freddie Mercury, there's a difference between them of about that much, whichever direction you go. So,
where you going, Royce? What's your call?
Well, I agree with Michael on Robert Plant would be my first choice too. You guys have all heard me say I love Led Zeppelin. I love Jimi Hendrix. I don't necessarily love Jimi Hendrix because of his voice, but it does.
He's a front man.
It works for me. It works for me, and it goes with his guitar playing and stuff. And I still like it. I know I had a lot of friends that didn't like it when I was in high school. Yeah, I like his guitar playing, but I don't like his voice. Well, I always like both, you know. But you know, somebody who I think has a really great voice, Poison.
Really?
Brett Michaels, yeah, I think.
Wow, right on.
Great mellow voice.
Top guy in the '80s, man. Yeah, I get that. All right, so my turn. So my number one would have been Freddie. I think he's hard to top. And plus, I saw him live. I've never seen anybody like that live, ever. Anything. I mean, it was unbelievable. I never heard, in my opinion, anyone sing as good or better than a recorded album than Freddie Mercury. I can attest to that. Wow. Incredible. So my number two is a tie. I love Robert Plant a lot. I think he's absolutely amazing. But I like Bowie's originality or difference kind of. So I got those two guys to be neck and neck. I'd have to have them sing off for the band, you know. Yeah. see what I pick. But those two guys right there, you know, and then, you know, as you went down, I'd have Scott from SDP really close up that list because I think he was amazing too.
I would do the same thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
What was that, Mike?
We would come across as that real that Dan was talking about. You know, Bowie's going to come off just as real as, you know, Freddie Mercury doesn't come off real. Freddie Mercury comes off greater than he would ever dream to be in real life, you know.
Yes.
But Bowie has that contact with, almost that Elvis shy kind of guy behind that smile of his. So he'd be a great choice. Yeah.
You know, like, well, I like that you pointed out there, Michael. One of my complaints about Steve Perry, and by the way, the people in the chat, I saw some of your stuff and I saw Steve Perry mention. I just want you to know, we're seeing your things. We're seeing what you're saying. And Steve Perry, I love Steve Perry. I met him. He's fantastic. But I said this in an earlier show. When you heard Steve Perry once, you heard Steve Perry on every song. Mm-hmm. You really have. He doesn't really change his dynamics. This is my opinion in his songs. And I feel that the one thing Bowie brings to the table and everything, he was incredibly dynamic. Oh, yeah. You could hear this one song that he was over here, and then the next song he's down there. Now, this is where I'm going to get tomatoes thrown at me. Freddie Mercury sometimes did the same thing as Michael's talking about, to where Freddie had that one voice. You know, you heard it on every song. He wouldn't really drop it or change it much. You guys know what I mean? That? I mean, I'm not saying he's any less by any means, but there was definitely, it was not a dynamic voice. And even Mick, I mean, if you look at some girls, I was like, ooh, he's way up here. And I was like, hey, you know, he was able to really get those phonetics changing around.
I think like Bowie brings a lot of theatrical to his vocal presence because he's such a great actor as well.
Well, one thing about Bowie, when I saw him live, and also Robert Plant, those two guys had something really interesting in common. Robert Plant wasn't all over the stage. He didn't run all over the place. No. He came up there, but he could do this. He would do this little thing with his finger up in the air, his little flip, right? And Bowie had a similar thing. Bowie would play, and all of a sudden he would just do this little hand. The crowd would go nuts. The entire stadium yelled with each hand flip. That's how powerful those two dudes were.
Yeah.
That's all it took. So you don't have to run all over the place like Mick to get the crowd to scream is what I'm saying. Although I love that Mick does that.
I got to admit, I was late in the game as a fan to Queen. I mean, there was a couple of songs I liked, but it almost wasn't until the movie came out I became a big fan of Queen.
Nice.
And no, seriously, I just for some reason it just never really connected with me early on.
That movie does not tell the story of Queen.
No. I know. I've read.
Yeah, it doesn't even tell the story of Freddie Mercury correctly.
No, really. Yes, it doesn't. It's terrible.
Yeah. But it did reacquaint me with all of Queen's music, you know.
It was good for that.
That's what I'm talking about. And I've read
there is it was just kind of hard to watch the movie while they're on stage in this year performing a song they wouldn't have played for another 3 years. And,
it was so off. Yeah,
it's just sad.
Really the Lady Gaga movie was better than that movie. The one that they, what was that? Star is Born was better than that movie, which was fictitious. Right. You know, was better than that movie.
Well, they had him having AIDS at what's that concert? He didn't have AIDS then, did he?
For the festival at the end, he was sick. Yeah, he was sick.
Oh, was he?
Yes, I believe he was. But I don't want to get into that. So. Yeah, I don't want to get it.
Yeah, I saw Queen in December '77 when they just came out with News for the World.
Oh, jeez,
that was a killer tour.
Yeah, I got the Playing the Game tour, so I was right there with a badass tour. If you want to hear Queen on that tour, you can hear exactly what I heard with the Queen Live Killers album. It's a double album. The stage photo on the front and the front song all the way to the end is exactly how they played the concert. So if you want a piece of that for the people who haven't heard Queen. That's it. Listen to that album. It's a double album.
I've seen them twice, and I got to tell you, I saw them in while they were touring for Queen 2. Went out the next day, bought Queen 2 and their first one, and then I saw them a couple of years later, and they were touring Night of the Opera, and I actually got to see them in a really nice theater. And if you haven't seen Queen
that would have been great.
Live. Their records don't show you what they sound like live, and they're polished live. Right?
Oh yes, crazy!
One of the most polished live bands you'll ever hear in your freaking life, man.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
They were great.
You know, one of the things I really love about the internet, you know, as time goes on, people keep putting more data out there, and I've actually found a concert, the Led Zeppelin concert I went to in '77.
Wow.
And it's just audio only, but it's the entire concert on audio.
I gotta look that up because that's when I went.
Yeah, it was Zeppelin. It was in San Diego Sports Arena.
Right on.
I think it was June of '77.
That has to be about right because I saw him in Oakland at Day on the Green. So that's I saw him the last weekend.
It was actually scheduled for like March, but it got delayed for some reason. They rescheduled it for like June. And I saw it right before I got out of the military. It was best concert ever. So I was really surprised when I found that the audio was out there. And same way with Boston. I saw Boston out in San Diego
Boston
when they were brand new with the Runaways. And nice. I found the audio for that.
I hung out with the Runaways when I was playing the Night Train when the Runaways were playing the same night. I was hanging out with Joan Jett down there. Yeah, I thought she was in love with me. I didn't know she was gay. She wants me.
I got a comment here from the chat. Maria Day is asking how we feel about Adam Lambert replacing Freddie Mercury in Queen.
Not me.
Not me either.
No.
Yeah,
I didn't want Paul Rogers there, and I love Paul Rogers. I see they've become a tribute band unto themselves. That's not Queen. Nobody go see them. They're horrible. All right, I'm sorry, but
my comment on that is that when they did that tribute to Freddie Mercury and all the singers took turns singing, of what I heard, I thought George Michael did the best job. And if there was ever going to be anyone to take that on, it was him. But even he was smart enough to know that that's not a good call and declined. He declined. Yeah. But that's the man who would have done it if anybody. You know, George Michael's voice is way underrated as far as what that guy can do. But back to stage presence stuff. You know, one of the difficulties I had, I was throwing this at some of my friends because everybody's off this weekend partying their butts off. And a special Memorial Day, right, to our people in service. We should mention that, by the way.
The fallen.
Day. Yeah, we wouldn't be listening to these bands if it wasn't for our boys that fought for us. So with that said, one of the things we had trouble coming up with was front women. We kept everyone naturally came up with the guys on the front. And I said, tell me about the ladies. Who's the lady that got you going? Now, of course, Tina Turner came up.
Tina Turner.
God, Tina Turner. But
the dance moves, the shaking. Oh yeah.
We brought her up, I think, on the last show, didn't we?
Yeah.
She brought up.
We did. Yeah.
Blew my mind as a kid. What about you guys?
Oh yeah,
Any ladies blew your mind?
Ann Wilson for me.
Jump to the 90s. Alanis Morissette.
Alanis, yeah, she was moving around.
She's like a one woman band up there, you know.
Yeah.
I agree with Bob. Bob just sent one. Pat Benatar. That's who I would.
Oh
yeah. Forgot about her. Yeah.
Blondie, Deborah Harry.
Deborah Harry. Deborah Harry was awesome.
Cool. She was cool.
And
she wasn't all
you know what? I'm not sure how to describe her stage presence, other than the fact that she was pretty and she was cool, and that was her stage presence, basically.
My friend at the time, who really liked her, I asked him that same question, Royce, way back when. I'm like, "What do you see in her?" And he said, "She's got this like dirty style to her." And you know, he didn't mean it like you first hear that. If you think about it, all the vocalists before that, all the ladies, you were dressed and you were very clean and perfect. Deborah came out with this sleeve torn, hanging off the shoulder. Her hair's kind of tousled. It was cool, you know.
Yeah, it was cool.
Eyes, guys. She had those bedroom eyes.
Oh, yeah, they were like sleepy eyes, like she was about to fall asleep. Yeah.
Yep. Mesmerized.
Well, of course,
you know,
Grace Slick. I mean, she was.
Yeah. More the voice. What about
the voice? That's
would you put Janice Joplin as a great front person?
I would put Janice Joplin as a fantastic front person myself.
Wants to be, man.
I mean, the way she.
Janice goes wherever she wants to go.
She had that mane of hair. She came out, no makeup.
It just over the top bluesy voice and talented singer, just amazing.
And she would become beautiful. You'd see her just hanging out. She wasn't an extraordinarily beautiful woman, but she started singing, getting up there, and she absolutely looked beautiful while performing.
She lit it on fire.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good expression. Yeah, she lit that stage on fire.
Exactly.
And that's where I was like, even going back to Aretha Franklin and stuff like that. I mean, you got people, and going forward in the 80s, Whitney Houston. When I saw Whitney Houston come out, whether you like that music or not, that chick was up there. There's a boy. She did that little walk.
No, she was. Yeah. She had a lot
bought
of
her
stuff.
very first CD. I bought her very first CD. I was impressed with her. As you guys know, I like good pop right up there with good rock. I have a difference.
Me too.
You know,
Me
I'm
too.
able to change it in my brain. When I'm in a rock and roll mood, I don't want to talk about Whitney nobody. But when I'm in a good pop mood, you know, I heard that first album, and the picture on the album was kind of cool.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And you know what? That woman had a voice.
She sure did. She sure.
Before,
hey, what about country? What about country? Dolly Parton. Dolly, man, she come out. What the hair, those long nails, boobs, of course. You're just like, holy shit.
He definitely had stage presence.
There was some presence going on there. But you could.
Women in country.
Well, Shania Twain. I mean, she had.
I forgot about Shania. Yeah. Shania brought that rock and roll pop in the country.
Yeah,
and just like took
pop.
over.
Yeah,
took over for a while.
Even Carrie Underwood. Oh my gosh, she's a knockout.
Yeah, Carrie Underwood. Yeah. Well, you know, another one definitely worth mentioning. Well, first of all, we were talking about Whitney Houston, and my oldest daughter's favorite artist was Whitney Houston when she was, I think she was in junior high. So we as a surprise, my wife and I bought tickets to go see Whitney Houston over in Fresno, you know, which is about a 2.5 hour drive from here. So we didn't tell her where she was going. We took her out of school. We took her over to Fresno. And she didn't know till we got there she was getting to see Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston, her favorite star. Nice. And that was a great show. Whitney Houston, I mean, that's a hard voice to duplicate right there. It's incredible talent.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she could really sing. And so we saw the show, and we didn't have the best seats. And so my daughter and I, we think a lot alike sometimes. We said, hey, we can see some better seats that are vacant. And the show's already started. Why don't we walk up and get one? And of course, my wife was just freaking out. No, we're going to get in trouble. We're going to get in trouble, you know, and this and that. And we finally talked her into it. We went up there and got seats in the first few rows right in front of the stage. It was just a great concert.
You know, my sister, after this, I asked my sister, I asked her the same question about the show. And she said, because she doesn't play, but she loves music. Kind of like you, Royce, where you do play that. But I mean, she doesn't play hardly at all. Yeah. But yeah, she's really a huge admirer of musicians. So I'd like to get her angle on it. And I asked her this question, and she said, you know, sometimes there's the anti frontman that really gets your attention. And I said, well, really? I said, like, what? She brought up Nirvana, and she brought up Neil Young. She said, these guys were kind of anti-establishment. They didn't give a shit, you know? And it ended up creating that I don't care what you think, gave that authenticity that you wanted to watch these guys. So it was kind of a reverse effect. You know, do you guys agree with that, or do you think that's
you know, that's what's funny is when I was about 16 years old, you know, there stopped being Republicans and Democrats. There was the establishment and us. You know what I'm saying? And they hated us, and we hated them back. You know, and that lasted for a few years, and it was over with. But then we some of us anyway got jobs and cut our hair off and started paying taxes. Then we had to choose sides. You know.
Well, I think Neil Young's a good example of that. I saw him live, and you know, he wasn't. Again, I think this is where, like when Dan was saying, you could have some of them. He had that authenticity. There was something, you know, when he spoke, you knew that everything he sang about and everything he talked about, it felt like he really believed it. He wasn't just doing it for the money or just to be on stage. Yeah. And so that added to it. And I felt the same thing with Nirvana. You're talking about Jeff and Dan both brought up that YouTube now has these releases. They're releasing data. And some of the cool things, if you guys haven't checked it out, the famous Unplugged, MTV Unplugged that Nirvana did, they're releasing the excerpts of what was being said in between the songs. If you guys haven't had a chance to check that out, you see Kurt.
That is one of my.
You kind of. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's one of my. Has been the past year or two one of my most listened to albums. I've got the 2 album set, MTV Unplugged in New York, you know, but I also had the CD when it first came out. I don't know whatever became of that. Maybe I still have it, but anyway, that is a fantastic album.
That dude was sitting in a chair in a fuzzy sweater with a guitar, and he would turn around. If you listen to the excerpts, he spins around a couple times. He's just got to stare. And he'll say something, and it's just unbelievable. You don't really realize the power that guy's got till you watch some of those clips. I'm telling you. You were going to say, Michaels.
Well, I was going to say, you were bringing up the anti-lead singer. What's his name with Alice in Chains had the same groove, baby.
Oh, yes.
And somehow you were drawn to them, although they both look like they'd rather be eating a burger across the street.
Absolutely good.
Yet they were mesmerizing.
They had some songs that were very mesmerizing.
Are we talking about Lane Staley?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He just looked like most of him was there, but there was a quarter of him that he left home. And somehow it translated. I mean, somehow he was always there, but not. And I got the same thing from Nirvana. Every time I would see any kind of, performance by these guys, they both had that kind of, I don't know, but you're drawn to it. I do know that. Yeah.
Hey, this is for Michael real quick. We talked about this a little bit earlier.
Presents.
And on the back, it actually this one came with this, and
wow!
You straighten this out and it stands up.
It's a pop up.
I took pictures of it standing up.
I didn't know that came with it. I didn't get that.
There it is.
Mine didn't have that in it.
No. The reason that Royce is even bringing that up is I kind of unveiled this for the studio. You know? Where is it?
Right.
But anyway, that's why he's bringing that up.
We had a conversation about it.
Have it around. Yeah.
This is a German pressing. It is the Swan Song label and everything, but it's a German pressing, and maybe that's why it came with this.
Yeah, mine didn't have that.
No, mine didn't either.
A couple of my viewers actually mentioned it besides you, Royce. So I bought the album brand new the day it came out, and I never saw a cutout. I never saw a cutout. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
that happens. That happens on that stuff.
Yes, like that Alice Cooper album. I think it's School's Out. There's the whole album kind of comes apart, and
It came with the panties.
Front guy.
Mine came with the panties.
Yeah, I have that one. Yeah.
There's a
I just thumbtacked them up right up to my wall. It disgusted my mom. But,
Is there a name for that little object on the Presence album?
Yes.
Monolith?
Most of the time, they just call it the object, don't they?
Right.
And,
I think the object. Yeah.
It's
weird.
The obelisk.
They made very few of them. If you had the real thing, it'd be worth a fortune.
To me, it always reminded me of the monolith on 2001: Space Odyssey.
Yes.
Exactly. Matter of fact, the second I saw it, that's
exactly
what kind of flavored how I heard that album. Because I would see that and I'd peruse the album artwork. And that's at the time, that was my favorite movie of all time and remained so for a decade or two until Matrix and some of those came out.
Yeah,
but I got to tell you, that flavored my whole brain as far as how I heard those songs. And Presence is one of my favorite Led Zeppelin albums. One of the albums that most Led Zeppelin fans rank a little lower than others. I think it's fabulous. It's like Led Zeppelin 3, almost, that you take that, and there's a lot of flavor. It almost seems to be sandwiched between Led Zeppelin 2 and Led Zeppelin 3,
Right.
and
I
love it.
I took Presence, Coda, and Physical Graffiti out into the living room where my player is. And I only got through Presence before we had to run downtown.
Achilles' Last Stand, great song. My favorite song off that album.
That's my favorite Zeppelin song of all time.
Yeah, that's song one on side one.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hey, where do you guys feel Chris Cornell fits in this mix? Stage presence or not? What do you think?
Chris Cornell.
I don't know much about him.
Well, Soundgarden, and then of course Audio Slave.
Right.
I'm
not a.
I like Chris Cornell. I thought he was good. Didn't he commit suicide?
Yes.
Yes. Although now, with some of the research back, it was 5 years ago, they're starting to say there was the doctor who prescribed medicine. And I don't want to get into this stuff again, but there was some of that into there. So, I don't like it when the music goes that direction, because that's not what we're about music here. We're not about that side of it. And that's just the drawback.
Right.
But back to Chris Cornell, the reason I brought him up is because you brought up Led Zeppelin and you brought up Whitney Houston. And one of the guys I saw do those songs unplugged, especially the Whitney Houston, was amazing. When Whitney passed, there's a video on YouTube, and he comes out with a music stand and puts "I Will Always Love You" on there, which is, of course, Dolly's song, but Whitney made it big. And he played as an a cappella sight reading on his acoustic guitar. It just, all they have is people with their phones, and they put all the data together and made a video.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
And he also does a couple Zepp songs when he's on Howard Stern, and really says some great things about Zeppelin, where one of the things I agree with most, he plays, I think it might have been Dire Maker, don't quote me on that. He does a song, or Through the Hills of Far Away, but he says, you know what, with Led Zeppelin, a lot of the songs that would have been #1 hits for most band, or the best song the band would have written ever, were really kind of overlooked with Led Zeppelin, because they had so many. They had so many great songs. It was like a pile of them, like a stockpile.
Oh yeah.
And so it was bizarre, that this song wasn't like just the best one. It's amazing. Anyway, so Chris Cornell
had several subgenres within each album. After the first two albums, I mean, the first two albums was heavy rock with a couple of ballads thrown in, with the exception of the one great ballad off the second album. But what I'm talking about here is that after that, it wasn't just light and shade, as people say, because when they talk about Jimmy, they go light and shade, light and shade.
Yeah.
And there's always that. But each album, and especially, and it's fastly becoming my favorite album again, Houses of the Holy. There are 6 different subgenres on that album, Lou.
Yeah.
It's such a journey to listen to it, and it's sad people aren't. See, when I listen to music, I sit down and put the album on from beginning to end. Even today, I do that, and people don't do that anymore. And it's like you're missing art. It's like being at the Louvre and walking past the Mona Lisa real quick.
That's a good way of putting it.
If you don't do it this way,
great example.
I always go beginning to end. I don't skip anything.
That's because we had albums. You had albums. You listen to one side and you turn over.
Not all songs are created equal, but it's still all part of the album. And it all needs to be
part of the identity, right?
It's part of the identity, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys. Pete Townsend as a frontman, I think it was like '64. They were playing in a small venue,
solo,
and he bumped the head of his guitar into the ceiling, right, accidentally, and the audience started to laugh, and so he kind of went into a rage and just destroyed that guitar. And after that, it became part of their act. Was just they might destroy all of their instruments at some shows, and it might just be Pete Townsend doing most of the destroying. But how did you guys feel about that as a feature of their performance? I know it caught on with a lot of other people afterward, but.
Well, I think you're going into, so this is an interesting fine line, because I ended up in this discussion with this topic with some musicians, where we suddenly started drifting into talking about the stage. And of course, bands, one of the biggest that came up from that, I'm blanking all of a sudden, Dark Side of the Moon, help me people, God, why am I not remembering? The Wall.
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, Jesus. Pink Floyd, Alice Cooper, those bands had a whole package. It wasn't just a front man necessarily, right? And I think that's where you're at with that one, Royce, is there's like a package of a performance, showmanship. Even Madonna, would come out with, it wasn't just her. You got the dancers, you got the bed comes out, she rolls on the bed, So where does that fall in? Is that truly a person with stage presence, or is that a show? Where is that end and begin?
That's a good point. You could say the same thing about Alice Cooper, which I think he has stage presence.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah, I think he's got both.
No, absolutely he has both. But
Would
you can't hide
Alice?
the stage
Do
presence.
you think Alice would be as impelling without all the stuff? You took everything away. Would Alice still be able to grab you? That would be the question.
As far as Pete Townsend,
Well, I think so, because I liked his songs going back to I don't know, 10th or 11th grade. Yeah.
See,
long before I knew about the guillotine and all that stuff, you know.
I think the whole Pete Townsend thing is just guitarist showmanship, you know, and that goes back to Chuck Berry again, you know.
Well, no, that's right.
Yeah, that swinging arm.
The pinwheel. He supposedly came up with that when he was playing with Hendrix, that show where they did Hendrix and they had a conversation, according to folklore, in the back room of who was going to go first. Because Jimmy knew that
Monterey Pop Festival?
That must have been it. Because I know there was a conversation where Jimmy's like, you go because you're going to break all your instruments. And they're going, no, you go because you're going to do all your stuff. And so the Who still broke their stuff. So Jimmy famously came out and lit his guitar on fire.
Yeah, he put lighter fluid on him and light him on fire.
That's supposedly the first time that Pete did that too, because he had Jimmy coming after him. So it was like game on. They were all sweet talking in the back, and they were like, "Let's get that."
Well, since we're on the subject of Jimi Hendrix, I have to go there, you know, because Jimmy was such a fantastic guitar player. And known for that. He would get into it was so easy for him. He could get into a lot of showboating, you know. And I remember seeing him playing, I mean, years ago with Junior Walker and the All-Stars, where he's just got to play his role, you know, where they're rocking back and forth, the horn section, guitar and the bass are rocking back and forth, and the two front guys are out there dancing. I mean, if you ever get an opportunity or take an opportunity to go on YouTube and Google Jimi Hendrix with Junior Walker and the All-Stars, I fall out of my chair laughing every time I watch it, because they're all back there with suits and Jimmy's rocking back and forth. He'd get so bored, he'd take his hand, the fretting hand, turn it upside down and start playing, and then switch back, and then switch back, you know. And but he was so good at playing the guitar that he really kind of stole the show. He played the entire solo on Hey Joe with his teeth at Monterey Pop, you know,
a little over the top.
And so when you talk about stage presence or front man, you could say, well, yeah, he didn't dance around. He didn't have that poultry-ish strutting that Mick Jagger had or any of that stuff. But it was just so flamboyant on the guitar. It kind of compensates for all that when it comes to giving him stage presence, and maybe even more so, you know, because that guy was just phenomenal. Like I said, played an entire solo with his teeth. You know?
See, that's. Go ahead,
Pete Townsend was never really comfortable with Jimmy. They fought as to who went on at the Monterey Pop Festival, and Townsend wasn't happy with it. And also, he had first heard Jimmy while Jimmy was still back in London, and evidently he approached Eric Clapton and told Eric, "Well, I guess you and I are out of a job now. So, what do you do with that?" You know, Townsend didn't like Led Zeppelin. Townsend didn't like, or doesn't like, I should say, still around, doesn't like anybody that's not the Who. That's fair enough. You know. Well, he guarded Keith Moon jealously. You know, I covered that in one of my videos. Keith Moon couldn't even go to another damn recording session for anybody else without Townsend. You know, where are you going? What you doing? So Townsend's always been a little bit
smart man.
Yeah. And he is brilliant. You know, I'm more of a fan of Townsend's demo album than I am of actually the Who's music. I think he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I love him just as you know, a guy who goes in and does 4-track recordings and demos and things like that. He's wonderful, but he does have he's kind of got a chip on his shoulder. You know?
Tommy was a masterpiece. You gotta give him that. But you know the thing about Jimmy. You know, everybody talks about
Who's
playing.
Next is their best album. That's
like
Abbey Road.
A fair debate, no doubt. Yeah. But Jimi Hendrix, everybody talks about his playing, and as a guitarist myself, I find his playing's doable. What makes Jimmy for me different when I saw him as well, especially initially, It's the way he was one with his guitar, the way he moved. And one of the things he was asked about that, I've never seen anybody to this day move like that with their guitar. It was like it's part of his body. And that's what's fascinating when you really watch Jimmy, is that it's not the licks. The chops have been, there's guys today that cannot play that 100-1. And I'm not being a jerk about it. It's just a fact. But they don't have the way he moved. They don't have the way he connected with that guitar. And then there's what we're talking about, the authenticity. And when you saw Jimmy come out in that 3-piece, you couldn't stop watching him. So part of the reason we talked about the show, I'm going to back this up a bit to Royce and I privately, where again, I always try to address the young guys watching these shows, because I think this is a great show for a lot of the knowledge for the up and coming musicians. I always am concerned about the guys coming up. And what I want to say to them right now about this is that I was just in Santa Barbara 2 weeks ago, saw some fantastic young bands on the way up. Okay. Every one of them, they were playing talent-wise. Every single place I went into, the bands knocked my socks off. Here's the bad news. There was nobody that made me feel that magic, that larger-than-life front guy thing. And that's not about being a new band. I've seen that happen in guys that just came out. So for you young guys out there, you can't make it up. You can't learn that stuff, but you can do this. You can be inspired by some of the people we just talked about tonight. You can watch these guys. You can learn from them, and don't try to copy it by a fake. But if you see someone of these guys that you could connect to, and you could feel it, go with that. And if you like the way that guy moves, and you're like, hey, I kind of move like that, then move like that. Let it loose, but let it loose, and then feel it when you do it, like Jimmy. And then maybe, thank God, one day you'll be something even close to that. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, it's called, I'm doing this with the Led Zeppelin series right now on my channel, but it's called Decoding What's Not There. All right.
Beautifully said.
Look at what you can't just see the obvious about these great bands that came before you. And I agree with you. I have seen some of the greatest talent. It's there, guys. The music industry is in complete tatters, but the talent is there. But a lot of the younger musicians haven't learned how to decode what came before.
Yes.
No, I totally agree with that. And I just want to say to anybody that's listening, and they're maybe listening in the future, that Michael Nolan has been decoding, Led Zeppelin, and I really highly recommend you go check his shows out. And he's really, really good at it. I mean, as you can tell, just sitting here listening to him, does an excellent job. It's one of my favorite places to go. I'm always waiting to see a notification that you're on, and I don't always get to catch it, at the time that it first comes on, because I'm at work or whatever the case may be, or doing something. But I always watch them. They're really good. I will say one thing about that comment on Jimi Hendrix, and I'm not offended. I mean, I'm a big Hendrix fan, but it doesn't offend me at all. But there's a lot of nuance mixed in there that I think a lot of good guitar players could pick up a guitar and play, Hey Joe, or a lot of these songs, but are they really picking up everything? I've had some people. Did you know John Bankston? He was a local guitar instructor. Like you, he's always had his own bands and things like that. And the funny thing is, he got nicknamed Johnny Pozo because he used to play at the Pozo Saloon so much.
I know him by that name. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I used to take guitar lessons from him. And I mentioned one time, I was talking to a guy the other night. In fact, it was a guy I bought a 1976 Gibson Les Paul Custom, 3 pickups, all gold hardware, for $450. I showed up at his house at 10 o'clock at night and left at 1:30 in the morning, an hour's drive away, with that guitar for $450. And when I showed up for my entry-level guitar lessons, he almost lost his mind when he saw what I got. And I go, the guy was saying Hendrix was easy. What really screwed up his future as a guitarist was Eddie Van Halen, and he just lost his mind when I said Hendrix was easy, And he goes, "There's so much nuance to his play that you could pick up a guitar and play Hey Joe, or you could pick up a
lot of slides.
Yeah, The Wind Cries Mary, or parts of it." But there's so much, and people are going to say, "Oh, Jimi Hendrix, The Wind Cries Mary," but there's so much that's missing there when you do it. That's all.
It's definitely part of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And as far as the, like everybody's saying, here's what I know. If any of these young guys had any of you guys show up at a gig and actually buy a ticket, you're doing something right. You want the guys on this panel showing up at your shows, because the reason that people need to listen to you guys is because you are like super fans. I mean, you're beyond above that. You guys love your music so much. You don't just listen to the music, you dissect it. You're really into it. So what the goal should be for the new bands, like you want guys like this showing up at your shows, because then you got something going on. And that's what a frontman wants right there. Watch it. Look down and see one of you guys.
People, you need somebody who knows what they want. You need somebody showing up at your gigs that is searching. If they're not searching, if you don't have searchers in your audience, maybe it's the next band that'll do it.
That's a great point. Yeah, you got to get beyond your family and friends. Go out of town, fill the room. Now you're working on it, buddy.
Well, what do you guys think about Agnes Young, the front man for AC/DC, guitar player? Yeah, you think of him as the front man because of all his antiques.
Chuck Berry.
Pardon me?
Chuck Berry. Yeah, that's what comes to mind.
I know. Yeah. But I mean, he used to go into these. I mean, first of all, he came out dressed in his schoolboy shorts, and he actually did some. He actually did some of that walk that Chuck Berry did.
Totally
the duck
did,
walk. Yeah. And then,
he'd
he'd do a solo and he'd fall on his back and start doing spasms like he was, having a stroke or something. I mean, just crazy on screen stuff.
With AC/DC, that's one of those bands where I'd never even heard them before. This is back in 1977, I believe it was. And I was stationed out in San Diego, and back then I used to buy one album a week. That's all I could afford. One out in actual vinyl, 4 CDs. And I walk into this record store down on Pacific Beach. And of course, that was back in the days where they'd had the little booth and they're playing an album and they'd have the album set up and they say, now playing, So I walk in there and I'm walking around and I hear this kick-ass band. And I go, who the hell is that? So I turn around and look at it, AC/DC. And I bought the album right there on the spot just because of the music. I had nothing. I didn't know what the guys looked like or anything.
Right.
But the music got me. And I said, this is going to be one of those bands. I knew it. The moment I bought that album, I knew AC/DC was going to be huge. But at the time, not a whole lot of people knew about them. But over the years, oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, in the 90s, we were going cross country, and there was always these bars that were in the middle of nowhere. All these smaller bars that became coffee houses later became Starbucks. But back in the day before Starbucks, these were all bars. People don't remember this. And there were places in between the big cities that you needed to get gas as a traveling band. And we were a headliner back then. It's like 13 Dead band. They were a big underground college. We do WashU and all these universities. Around 96, grunge is still going, maybe a little earlier. This band came and warmed up in front of us one night. I always came out. I wasn't like the other guys who would always sit in the back. We don't want to be seen. I'm like, screw that. I'd go out and I'd watch the bands before us because I wanted to see what's going on. And this band came out, and I had to peel myself off the damn wall after their first couple of notes. Literally peeled myself off the wall. I went to the back and said, guys, you got to come out. See, and they're like, no, we don't have time for that. Well, that band was that one. They were doing that song, F you, I won't do what you tell me. You know who that was?
Rage Against the Machine.
It sure was. It just goes to show you want to talk about, and that's happened more than once. You want to talk about a stage presence. There's a guy, a young man. He was young at the time. He came out, and it was like an explosion. It was a damn bomb. Boom! As soon as it came on, he was doing pull-ups on the amps and stuff like that. And I was just sitting there with my jaw was down. We were a hard jamming badass band too. These guys were smoking. So you got to watch that. When a band comes out and they're hitting it and they get you to watch and they're brand new like that and you can't take your eyes off of them, stage presence, man, right there. And when you got a whole group that's on the ball at the same time, I think Pearl Jam was good at that. Those early guys, that where everybody just came out and is all solid. Led Zeppelin, of course, one of the strongest fours of all time. That's also to be said. So if you got you got a front man who can pull it off, and then you got the whole band that's going with them. Watch out, supergroup on the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to mention a couple of things from the chat. I agree 100%. Bob has brought up, he mentioned Christy Hyde. He brought up Joan Jett, Susanna Hoffs,
Lita Ford,
Belinda Carlisle, of course, Tina Turner. We talked about Tina Turner.
Bob is helping us a lot.
Gloria says, Gloria, let's not forget Lulu. She married Mo Gibb from the Bee Gees, and their marriage was the first marriage that was out of control. Okay.
I don't know. Sid, what was it, Johnny? Was it Sid Vicious? His marriage. But did he ever get married? That's a great movie, by the way. That dual suicide at the end, which they're not sure of.
They weren't married.
They weren't married? Oh, okay. What a love story from hell. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I mean, we've already passed the hour point.
Yeah, we do.
And I just want to say that I could see this having at least a part 2, if not a part 3. I mean, this is kind of endless. So let's all think about it for next week. And Lou said he drew a blank earlier. I actually drew a blank when I was asked to name my next favorite singer. After Robert Plant, I actually kind of drew a blank.
Could be the whiskey.
I'm not. But I'm. Yeah, I know. I had a couple of beers earlier. But I find myself. I enjoy the singing, but I'm always trying to listen more to the instruments than I am the singing. I might drive down the road listening to Led Zeppelin and try to focus on nothing but the drums, or nothing but the bass and the drums, and I do that kind of stuff all the time. It's a little game I play with myself because I'm always trying to isolate it to get the full impact of it's just separating the instruments.
Royce, who do you? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's something I noticed the other day I thought was pretty cool. We're talking about isolating different instruments.
Yeah.
Sometimes on YouTube you can find where they'll isolate just a bass on a song. And I actually saw a video the other day of Mick Jagger doing a Rolling Stones song, and you don't hear any music. All you hear is Mick Jagger. It's the oddest thing. It's the oddest thing.
Is it the one where he's in the booth? He's in that booth?
No, he's actually doing a video. He's doing the rooster dance. And it's just
him.
Yeah. And it's just raw audio. It was so weird.
That is weird. Yeah.
Yeah. We call that hang lining in the studio. They're basically hanging you, and it's a horrible experience.
Well, you know what? There actually is a little more to say here. Mick Jagger's come up a couple of times, and there's a couple of things I wanted to say about Mick Jagger. And he was really famous for so many things on stage, but it was like a rooster strut, that he did. And he did all kinds of things with his hands, and he grabbed at the air, and even who was it that came up with the song Dance Like Mick Jagger? It was
Maroon 5.
Maroon 5, yeah. And Adam
Lambert.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I was listening to that song earlier today, Moves Like Mick Jagger, I think it's called, So they did like a parody, and I was watching the video, and they were trying to move like Mick Jagger and dance like him and stuff like that. And they were dressed, one of them was dressed like, I thought it was Mick Jagger for a minute. But anyway, so his moves on stage have always been iconic. And strutting around on stage, and his stage presence, this one article I read, they called it poultry-esque dancing.
Poultry-esque.
He talked about that, though.
I just thought, his signature rooster strut, and I've seen the Stones twice in concert. I missed the third time. We see them like every 20 years, my wife and I, it seems like. Long Beach Arena, Portland, Oregon, and then we had tickets at San Diego. Bought the tickets, booked the rooms, even had a flight, and it's really only a 5.5 hour drive, maybe 6 hours with traffic. But COVID hit, and they never played San Diego. We finally did get a refund, on the tickets at least.
Well, I did see them in November in the Cotton Bowl, and
you filmed some of that, yeah.
And
was Charlie still alive then?
No, this was right after he passed, and So they had a new drummer on there, and Keith Richards never really left his spot, and and even Mick didn't do a whole lot of the rooster thing, but he does have a backup singer that's killer, man. She's really good.
Really?
They play off each other during some of the songs.
Okay.
So it's not just Mick by himself. He's up there dancing with the backup singer as well. She's I can't remember her name, but she's someone to watch. She's really good.
Well, you can learn from Mick Jagger, and he talked about this years ago in the early 80s. They were asking him about how he dressed. And I thought it was really fascinating to learn because he's such a businessman. He's not just a musician. He's a businessman, and he's a very good one. And what he does, even down to his clothing, if you notice, it's brightly colored for a reason. You might think, well, he's kind of clownish. No, he said he does the bright yellows, the bright reds, because he knows that in a distance, you can't see. It becomes a blob. Yeah. And so when he wears those, he knows he's in a stadium. He's thinking about that, even down that he wants you to be able to see a visual of him moving around. It's brilliant. And you'll notice Freddie Mercury does the same thing. And we talked about Lambert with Queen. When I watched Queen with Lambert, he wore all black. And you know what? He vanished. When he would move around, he would vanish off that stage because of that. He went out of the spotlight. You couldn't see him. So that shows you right there the difference between veteran, superstars versus a rookie. I hate to say that. That was a rookie. It's a rookie mistake. And that's two pros against a rookie right there.
Right.
Case closed.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun tonight. I want to thank all you guys. Let's get another episode of this in. It might even take 2 to get through it. I don't know. We had 2 on the last one, the albums, and this is easily 2 shows here. So we'll pick up where we left off, and I want to thank everybody in the chat. We really, really appreciate you. If you don't mind, hit the thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm and helps the show get noticed a little bit more. The more thumbs ups we have, and if you're not already subscribed, and it looks like everybody that's here has already subscribed, go ahead and do that in case there is somebody that isn't, and hit the notification bell so we can let you know when the next one's coming. So thank you very much. We appreciate you being here and supporting us, and thanks to all the hosts, and we'll see you guys next Sunday. Good night.
Ciao, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Steven Tyler next week.